I'm Ruth Frost. I married an American soldier during the war. I tripped him on the ice rink at St. Moritz. And I've been keeping him on ice ever since. Well, up until 2010, when it was his turn to go first. God is not expecting me for some time yet. I'm only 93.
Almost.
Well, in 2 weeks. I've been playing on 93 for the last 6 months, I think. Anyway, it's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and some lovely new ones, too. This is great. I'm so used to being on stage all my life. Even when I'm sleeping, I think I'm on stage. I have the best dreams. Okay, now let's get this show on the road. You know who I married, and I tripped him on the ice rink. Okay, let's get on from there. Now, we were married in 1945. And then I went to the United States. He went home, got released from the army, and went to work with his dad on the railroad. His dad was the section head for the Chicago and Northwestern Railway. So he got a job with his dad until I got over. He didn't know what he was going to do with his life yet, but I knew what he was going to do. He was going to go to work. He was already working, of course, but that wasn't what he wanted to settle for. So I said, when I got over there, I said, so what are you going to do? Have you got a job lined up? You're not going to be on the railroad all your life, are you? He said, no, but I'm not sure what I want to do. I said, you've had 6 years to think about it. Anyway, we started out. He met me at the dock, because he'd been home 6 months ahead of me. And he met me at the dock in San Francisco. And when he called out to me, he said, hey, look, look. And I'm saying, what? Mother and Dad Frost were there to meet me too. They traveled 12,000 miles to come over and meet me at San Francisco. Now, I had written to his parents for 3 years because we only saw each other for 31 days before we were married. And I said, I need to know this man that I'm going to marry. So I wrote to his parents. And his mother was wonderful. She just wrote me letters about her son. Never said anything against him, but I read between the lines. He wasn't going to be an easy man to live with, I think.
What about the boat trip?
What about the who?
When you got on the boat to go to America.
Oh, right.
So you're in Australia, you've got married, he's gone back to America.
Right. See, I told you I couldn't do without her. She's my left-hand man. We were on the platform at Flinders Street Station, where the station was going to take us to the ship in Sydney. All my aunts were there.
Who's we?
My mother, huh?
Who's we? All the war brides.
All the war brides, yeah.
Fill
right.
that in a little bit.
I think I'll turn it over to her.
I know all the stories.
I've never had another comedian on stage try to upgrade me. My stepmother, all my aunts, her sisters, they were all there to see me off, and my young brother, Peter, who I took care of when he came home from hospital. He was only a 7-month-old baby, and he was only just a little over 2 pounds. They kept him in hospital for 5 weeks until he made 5 pounds, but he never did reach 5 pounds, but they let him go. Apparently they didn't think he was going to last. We proved them wrong. He was put in my room. I was 13 years old. My stepmother couldn't handle him. My father complained he couldn't sleep with a crying baby in the room. So I got him in my sleep out in the backyard of my aunt's place and took care of him for 2 years. He was my baby.
So you're saying...
He's now 80 years old.
So we go back to when you were saying goodbye to him on the dock?
Yeah, right. I wouldn't let go of him. It was on the station. Get your act together there. It was on the station at Flinders Street. And the train was running about 3 hours late getting away because Victoria was well known for its wartime strikes. The railway was always running according to the communists, I guess. I have no idea who was the back of it. I was only a kid then. But they were on strike every once in a while. 3 hours late, and all the people were helping move furniture and pack the car, get all the luggage on the train. And the train couldn't leave until we got everything off the platform. Anyway, my father hadn't shown up. We all knew where he was. He was in the Riversdale Road pub, telling all the fellas his daughter was not going to marry one of those bloody Yanks. She's going to stay at home with her dad. It's the first time he ever showed me any love, I think. I never saw any. Anyway, he didn't show up. My young brother, Sid, got on his motorbike and went back. He said, "I'll get him, don't worry, he'll be here." He went to the Riversdale pub, picked him up, stuck him in the sidecar, and brought him into the station. And I thought, I hope he doesn't show up. Then I heard this booming voice, like he's calling all the cattle in. "She's not going to go to that bloody place with a Yank. She's not going to marry a Yank." Well, I was already married to him, wasn't I? "She's going to stay at home with her dad." And so we went. And I went to get on the train. He wasn't going to come anywhere near me. And he got a hold of my left arm and pushed it up the back of my body, nearly broke my arm, and he said, "You're not going." And I turned around and slapped him, and somebody was yelling, "Get the police, get the police." So I ran to the station, none of my luggage, just ran to the station. My brother brought the luggage to me. I got on the train with the rest of the war brides that were going with me, and we left the platform. But the one I was going to miss most of all was my young brother, Peter. He's now 80 years old. I can't believe it. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. We were on the dock. The train was right up to the dock to let us off. They had to unload that. We had to have shots. I can't remember what they were though. Smallpox, I think. And the serum, we found out later, was much too strong. We all finished up with arms in the air like this, and we couldn't even put them down. And we're all in, the worst sore arm. Everybody had one, so we weren't alone. But they found out from that trip that the serum was far too strong in Australia. So they had to make adjustments for that for any future brides going overseas. Anyway, we got on board the ship. We went under the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Nobody there on the docks to farewell us at all, because we were in Sydney, not in Melbourne. We were all from Melbourne. I got under the bridge and I got the worst pain in my side. I just couldn't, this was coming on several times. I had it for years. It was, what do you call it, appendicitis attack, but it was one of those that just gave you lots of trouble, but never ready for surgery. So the girls were saying, we're going to get the doctor, we're going to get the doctor. I said, don't you dare. Not until you get out of the heads. Then you can call a doctor. And we went through the heads and the pain subsided. I didn't have to have a doctor. So that was fine. Then we were assigned to our bunks and we found out this was an army transport ship. So everything was 36 bunk beds to every department, because this is a troop ship. So we rushed down to pick out our beds. I wanted a bottom bed, I got a bottom bed. And somebody would say, I want a bottom bed, I don't want a top bed. Well, the argument started. I was with a bunch of women that was dissatisfied from the moment they got on that ship. And I said, this has got to stop. 36 with 3 showers. That's all. Remember, it was for men. It wasn't for women. We showered a lot more often than men did. Anyway, I got up on the top bunk and I said, okay girls, now look. Why are we on this ship? Now come on, face up to it. You want to argue and complain and cry and carry on the whole time with 36 of us to contend with. Why are we going? Come on now, tell me, why are we going to the United States? So it got a bit quiet. And some of the girls called out, you're right, Frosty, you're right. We're going to see our husbands, and they're going to see their children for the first time. So I said, now we've got that squared away, we don't want any more trouble. Girls, let's be happy and enjoy this trip together. But there was one that never got out of her fetal position like this the whole time. And 3 days later?
Yep.
Yeah, oh, I've got it right. How about that? Thank you, Linda.
I'm reading off your notes.
Oh, are you? 3 days later, we hit the tail end of a tidal wave. Now, we're in an army ship that was a riveted ship. It's a wartime ship. There's something else. They used to make ships another way. But these were all riveted wartime ships, army transports, built in a hurry. When they hit a wave, this is how the officer in charge of information on board, he said, when they hit a wave, they hit it like that, and then went up and down. How they were built before the war, they used to go with the wave and glide slowly over. So we were falling against the wall. There were people with busted heads, broken arms. There was one with a broken leg in 2 places. She had to endure the whole trip in the hospital bed. It was just bedlam, and all the babies were abandoned. The mothers were so sick they just wanted to throw themselves overboard. We pulled a couple of girls off the deck that would have been washed over. We put them in the gangway and closed the door on them. That's the only thing we could do because we were so busy taking care of half a dozen others. They were throwing up. Oh, you couldn't walk anywhere. It was terrible. We could slide on the deck. So we all had to go together, hang on to each other and grab something. Grab anything we could to stand up straight. We went down, we forgot all about babies. We were so busy taking care of mothers. We didn't know she had a baby or two or a small child downstairs in their own quarters. We took care of the mother, and then all of a sudden I said to the Red Cross girls, "What about the babies? Who's taking care of them?" "Oh, we've forgotten about the babies." So we bundled up with bundles of nappies, diapers they call them over there. Bundles of nappies, went downstairs, and with water bottles, we didn't know what else to do. We had to go down and find baby bottles down in the cabins and bundle those up in plastic. They had plastic bags too. And bundle them up in these plastic bags and take them to the galley and have all the sailors that worked in the galley to disinfect everything, wash them all, get them all ready, and the sailors down there in the galley found a recipe from the Red Cross girls and made one formula for every baby on deck. We didn't know who was breastfed, who was bottle fed. If we saw a woman with lots of milk, we just attached the baby, whether it was her baby or not. We had to stop the crying. It was terrible. They were all screaming, and we were busy changing nappies. Oh, you've got no idea what we went through. Anyway, we saved everybody. I think there were 12 girls still on their feet, and 3 of those were so seasick. I said, "You're not seasick, get on your feet. Here, shove this in your mouth, crackers. Drink some water. Do anything but throw up, we need your help." 12 of us, and you've got no idea how they congratulated us and made such a fuss over all the girls that helped save the rest of them. Even the crew was sick. Luckily, there wasn't a doctor that was sick. We had their help. So, but that was really something.
Then you had a concert.
Oh yeah, and then we planned a concert. And we had to have auditions to find out whether you were good enough to be on the concert. And the talent we had, you've got no idea. Some of these girls, I swear they only married the fella just to go to Hollywood. That's the kind of concert we were going to have. It was going to be really professional. Not only the girls, but Americans are all trained in school to be musicians and actors because they'd put on lots of plays. So we had talent galore. You just couldn't believe the talent we had. And a lot had to be passed over because they weren't as good. And then I had to work with James Callender. James Callender was a professional dancer with his sister on movies. You may, if you could go back that far, you may remember seeing musicals with a boy and girl dancer. And that was James Callender and his sister. And when he and I were together, we were planning the whole thing, and we had to do the auditions, and we had, because we both had theater experience, so we did all the auditions. And some of the girls were rather shy. One girl was a violinist, and somebody else saw her case, but she never mentioned that she had a violin under her bunk. We got it out and we said, come on, just play for us. We got her to play. Oh, the talent just made you cry. And the show had to go on, and I said, how about we get the captain off the bridge? Now the captain would not come off the bridge. He had delivered a load of Australian war brides about 6 months before, or 3 months before. He was assigned to do our trip. He wanted nothing to do with any Australian girls at all. He had one of the worst times in his whole life. He said, never again. I'm gonna get out of the Navy if they assign me again. Well, here he was captain of our ship, refusing to come down to welcome us. He wanted nothing to do with us. He'd said, he ordered MPs to walk the decks, morning and night. Four MPs on board ship the whole time. You didn't make a move anywhere. Now in our group of women, we spotted 3 girls that were going to cause us one heck of a headache. They were really cheap little tramps. They really were. We had them spotted. We got together and we said, all right, now let's get an assignment. We'll take shifts to keep our eye on these girls, because they were sneaking down to the below decks in the sailors' quarters, not our quarters. Anyway, the captain never ever got to hear about this, and we kept our eyes on him, and we all became private detectives. But we wanted to arrive with a good name. We weren't going to let anyone spoil that for the rest of us. But they found 3 fellas that would dance for them. They were jitterbugs. Jitterbug dancers. If you ever remember those jitterbug dances, wow. I did jitterbugging with a cousin of mine because I couldn't remember that I ever liked it. And he said, oh, you were such a good dancer. Come on, we'll try it. So we did. We got out there, and because I was an acrobat and a Daisio dancer, I could do almost anything, you know, like wrap my leg around my neck and all that stuff, you know. I'm not going to show you, don't ask me. You just try and imagine it. I've had 2 legs, there and there, behind my neck. I'm a braggart too, you know. Anyway, I've done jitterbug dancing, so I know what I'm talking about. And these girls and they found 3 sailors who loved jitterbug dancing. So they had them lined up and they signed up to do jitterbug dancing. We let them do it, we let them follow through, because they were talented in that particular field, as well as many others. And they were really good. But the MPs had their eye on them as soon as they left the stage, after they finished their dance. And now my assignment was with Callender, Lieutenant Callender, to put this show together. And we had to practice down below deck. Now to do that, we had to leave the door of his office open, and every time an officer went past, he went 2 steps past and then 2 steps back. Are you allowed in here? Yes, sir, we're allowed in here. We're putting the show together. We had to explain why we were together below deck. So
what was the act that you were going to be doing?
I'm not too sure now. Oh, yeah, oh, sure I
The
did.
ventriloquist?
Oh, yeah. Before I left Melbourne, I was acting as the dummy in a ventriloquist act. And the fellow that I worked with was also my dance partner when we did other shows. And he was, what do you call it, a methods actor. And he knew when to get the laughs. If we did another show together, if we were going to do any comedy. And this one, he was the straight man. He didn't like that one bit. I was getting all the laughs. He pulled out at the end. He said, I don't want to do this anymore. You're getting all the laughs. And I said, well, I'm supposed to, aren't I? So he quit on me, and we never got to do the act. But when I was on board ship, and my partner in this, the officer, he said, you know, Frosty, I would always love to do some comedy. He said, I'm tired of always doing just straight dancing and being on stage and having to hold my head up. He said, I'm really quite a good comedian. So I said, well, how about you and I doing an act together? And he said, what do you mean? I said, I was going to do a show, and I was going to be the dummy in a ventriloquist act. He said, oh, that sounds wonderful. We said, let's try it. So I showed him a few things that I would do, and I would sit on his lap, and I'd fall down, and I'd do that, and he'd have to pick me up from behind and all this, and get me set up. You can imagine, you know. Anyway, we practiced that, and we did it on stage, and it was, I'll tell you, it was brilliant, because I learned so many new jokes on the way, getting stuff from the audience. You know, they were calling out and everything. Some of them recognized me. But before we started this show, we had to get the captain off the bridge. I said, we're not going to start the show until we get the captain downstairs with us. And they said, how are we going to do that? He's made his mind up, he's not going to come down. I said, well, we're not going to put the show on until he shows up. Now we're going to put him in a position where he can't refuse. We sent him a gold-edged invitation. Sure enough, we got word that the captain will appear. I said the show was not going to start without him. And we got him down in his chair right in front, and everybody clapped when he showed up. Really good stuff. Oh, we thought that made the show start off with a real bang. Even the audience, the boys in the audience just played so much better when they knew their captain would do that. So, and it was, we wanted to put the show on again the next night, the night after, but we couldn't, of course. We're only 4 days out of San Francisco. When we arrived, it was a Sunday night when we arrived in the dock in San Francisco. And the captain got orders from the shore that they cannot tie up on a Sunday. It was against the rules of the ocean or something.
People don't work on a Sunday.
Oh, I don't know what it was. Never mind. So we had to drop anchor out in the Bay of San Francisco, and the light, there was boating going all over, all lit up. It was wonderful. And right? Are you receiving me over there? I'm wired for sound. I've got a big thing down here. You should see me when I'm trying to go to the toilet. Trying to get all these...
I didn't record the audio, we're okay.
Oh, he had to remember to turn it off if I went to the toilet. Otherwise you would hear everything. I must remember that. That would be good, part of my act, wouldn't it?
We're in Alcatraz.
We are not. We're in the Bay of San Francisco. Watch your lines there, kid.
You're writing.
It's my writing. Anyway, all these ships, all the little boats coming around the ship and everything. And all the girls are out on deck because one of the big ferries came out with bands playing and men calling out, "Honey, are you up there?" Their husbands were out there on the boats coming around the ship because they were expecting us to land on Sunday. And here it is, Sunday night, and we couldn't get into dock. And then Alcatraz, the island of Alcatraz. You've heard of Alcatraz, the big prison in San Francisco Bay. It was all lit up. And then we heard gunfire. More boats coming out, all lit up. Police boats coming out with sirens blazing all over the place. And the girls were saying, "Oh, it's scary. What are we going to do? What are we?" And I said, "Girls, you've got it all wrong. That's our welcoming committee. Didn't you notice? Look at the way they're carrying on out there. They got bands playing over there on that boat, and they've got all the lights on all the boats going around the sea. But what's that gunfire?" I said, "Oh, they're just blowing up balloons and popping them." I didn't know what it was, but the girls were getting a bit scared. I said, "Don't worry about it. They just found out we've just arrived from Australia." So we made a big thing of it and we started dancing.
But what was really happening?
Alcatraz had its biggest prison break. They already killed several of the staff. Men had gone into the water. We had no idea. Later, when we read the stories in the paper, we thought we could have picked up a few of those fellas and taken them on board. They wouldn't have a clue where they went. So we don't know. We just didn't know until all the papers, the newspapers, because we didn't have television then. You know, 1946. We didn't have television to tell us and show us all the pictures. So we had to wait for the news on radio and newspapers to tell us the story. But I've got copies of those events in my scrapbook. And next day when we docked, We forgot all about Alcatraz and all the fellas that might have been swimming around the boat. We had no idea. So we docked, and my husband's on the dock, and he say, "Look, look." He's pointing to someone. What's he doing? And then Mother and Dad waved their hands and said, "Hello, darling. We're welcoming you too." That was my future mother-in-law and father-in-law. I'd written to them for 3 years. And we felt that we knew each other, and they couldn't wait to meet me. So I had a family that really loved me. It was tremendous. Then we traveled for a month all around California and what's the other state? Washington State, above California. And I met all the relatives on my mother-in-law's side, but none from my father, my father-in-law. His ancestors, 4 brothers, left England and settled in the United States, and he was one of the children of the settlers in the early settling of the United States. So he had the history, but he didn't keep in touch with his family. Anyway, we visited with all the relatives, we had parties, and we had big picnics, and I got to know so many of the relatives. And then we traveled for a month on the way back to South Dakota. South Dakota is not a big state, not well known, except for Indians and Mount Rushmore. It's made up of farmers, corn-growing farmers, and cattlemen. A lot of cowboys and a lot of Indians. And that's where I went, to a little town of 400. And everybody in town knew I had arrived. I think Mother was telling them this, my letters were going all around the neighborhood. Everybody was reading my letters, so everybody knew me personally.
They had a bridal shower?
Oh.
A surprise bridal shower?
A surprise bridal shower, welcoming parties, kitchen teas, in case I didn't bring anything with me. And I didn't. Most of my gifts at my wedding were all breakable. So I left them all there for my stepmother. She got them all. I never got any of my wedding presents except one 3-egg silver, a little stand with 3 silver egg cups. And I got that out, and my sister-in-law, Grace, she used to come in and see that on the shelf, and she'd stand there looking at it. And I'd say, "What are you looking at, Grace?" She said, "I'm wondering what this is. These 3 little cups on a stand, what are they?" I said, "They're egg cups." "They're what?" "Egg cups." "What's an egg cup?" I said, "Well, how do you eat a boiled egg?" "Well, we just crack the shell and peel it off, and then mash it in a dish." I said, "Let me boil an egg for you." So I showed her what you did with an egg cup. I thought, this is ridiculous. But I thought it was just really unique. Americans, you'd think they'd know better. I had a lot of fun with those people.
So where were you, when you arrived in America, where were you living? Who did you live with?
I lived with my husband. Why?
Where? But with his parents?
Oh, no, we only lived there long enough Bill had found out what he really wanted to do. He wanted to become a linotype operator because his sister and brother-in-law had just purchased a partnership in a newspaper in Iowa. So we went down there to visit them and see this new newspaper they got. And he was fascinated with the linotype machine. And Lloyd said, well, how long are you going to be looking for a job? And he said, well, I'll work on the railway until I find something I like. Can you imagine? Anyway, he looked at that linotype and looked it over, and he said to Lloyd, what is this machine called? You know, it's got a keyboard on it, just like a typewriter. And he learned a little bit from Lloyd all about this linotype. And then he got to thinking, and he and Lloyd discussed the fact that maybe this is what he'd love to do, get into newspaper work, in production. So then he filled out a form to get the GI Bill. The GI Bill was a teaching program, and it would go for about 4 years before he would get full qualification that he'd finished his training on a linotype operator, as a linotype operator. So in the meantime, he's going to have to learn all this, and we would have to live, if we left his parents' home and went out and started on our own, we were going to have to live on $90 a month, and that wasn't very much even in the United States. And the first place he went to, he got 35 applications from owners of small town newspapers wanting him to come work for them. They would train him to do linotype. They would pay him $12 and $6 a week, and the government made up the rest to $90. So we were going to live on $90 a week, a month that is, not a week, $90 a month for 4 years. So I thought, oh dear, I had to find a way I could make some money too. So I had a big velvet cushion I made for myself and tied it on my suitcase when I went on board ship to go to the United States, the SS David C. Shanks. And that was going to be my sunbathing cushion. But I stuffed it with baby wool, still with the labels on it, packed it in that, and used it as a cushion on board ship. And all the girls would borrow it if I wasn't going to use it. And when it came time for me to start knitting for my first baby, when I found out I was pregnant for the first time, I had to open the pillow and get the wool out and get it all ready. Well, it came out in little hard balls. You got no idea because it was so matted together. You know, the girls all used it and they threw it at each other and they rolled on it and they slept on it. Hard balls of wool. You've never seen anything like it. Oh, I cried for 3 months. Oh, what am I going to do? Because I thought it'd be too much to go through customs to get wool from Australia all the time. Anyway, I said, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try one of those balls of wool. And I started to unravel it. It took me a month just to get one ball unraveled. It was stuck together all over, bit by bit. And I wrapped it around a wire hanger and made it into a diamond shape like that and wrapped it around this way and that way, and I had them all lined up, and then I dipped them in sudsy water, got it all washed, then rinsed them weeks later. You got no idea the time I put in there. I was determined I was going to knit that wool, and dried them out on the clothesline, hanging on the, and all my neighbors kept coming, "What's that hanging on your line?" I said, "That's my baby wool." "Your what?" "My baby wool, I just washed it." "Why would you wash it?" I said, "Oh, let's not go through that." And I told them what had happened, you know, and I said 3 months it took me to get it to that point. And I knitted it up, and I was not a knitter when I went, but I took all the Australian knitting books, all the Australian knitting needles, the measures, everything that would be with me when I started knitting. And then my neighbor came over and she said, "That is beautiful. Where did you get, what kind of yarn are you using?" I said, "It's baby wool from Australia." "Really?" She said, "I go to the local fairs and I take all my pickles and my jams and jellies and bread making and all that." She said, "Keep knitting. By the time the shows start, the knitting fair, the fairs start," she said, "maybe you'll have a few pieces that I can take with me and I'll enter them for you." And I said, "Oh, I'd love that." So I knitted like crazy. And she brought me a book and showed me what items I could enter. And I think I had everything on that list knitted, plus there was an extra space for extra unlisted things. And I had those too. And do you know, she brought home, we wallpapered the kitchen with all my winnings. First class, all the blue ribbons hanging all around the kitchen when Bill came home from work, and he said, "I don't like your decorations. What's that? What's that all about?" Because we hadn't put curtains up yet. And I said, "First prize," and they're all cash prizes. He couldn't believe it. I was making money on baby knitting, and the baby wasn't even here yet. So I knitted like crazy, and she went to about 5 different fairs, and I won first prize and everything on that list. And I couldn't believe that I could beat so many people at knitting. They had never seen that. I was living in the Midwest, where it was all European settlers that were used to snow country. And it was all big, thick, heavy stuff that they knitted. Nobody did fine baby knitting like we did in Australia. And I didn't know this until the shows were all over. And people wanted to come, and people knocking on my door saying, "I hear you won all these prizes. Can we see them? Can we see them?" We only lived in 2 rooms. We couldn't get everybody in. So I said, "Well, we'll put it in the newspaper window downtown so everybody can see it that way." It was wonderful. I couldn't believe I could do that much.
So you're only living in 2 rooms because you were with
2
Bill's
rooms.
parents?
Yeah.
So what about a house for yourself to buy? What happened there? You wanted to buy a house and build it?
Oh, yeah. He always said, "I want you to know," before I married him, he said, "I want you to know that when we get married, I'm never going to own a house." I said, "What do you mean you're never going to own a house?" He said, I want to rent for the rest of my life and let the landlord do all the work." And And I said, don't you know that landlords never do any work for their houses? You have to do it yourself? And he said, oh, no, you don't. Not in the United States. You've got to keep up what you contracted to do. So that was his attitude. He never wanted to own a house. It was too much work.
What was his line?
He was a linotype operator.
No. What was his line that he used to say? I'm a lover, not a poet?
That's what he used to tell me. Oh, God love him. I'm a lover and a poet, not a maintenance man. I laughed all through our marriage about that. He never realized just how cunning a woman he married. I used to walk through the house carrying a pair of pliers and a screwdriver, and I'd just come out of the bathroom and I make sure I'd walk past him, you see, and he'd say, what are you doing with those tools? I said, well, I was going to change the thing on the tap to stop the drips, you know, the tap has been dripping for some time. And he'd say, you mean the washer? I said, oh, you know what it is? Oh, I didn't know that's what you called it. And he said, give me those tools. And he'd take the tools and I'd what are you going to do? He said, where's the washers? I said, oh, I've got a box of those somewhere. Take a look in the cupboard under the sink. So he took a look and found the washers. They all fit. And he came out sometime later and he said, I used the right tools. I've changed the washers. I said, on how many taps? He said, all of them. So you're free for the next 6 months. You won't have to do it. But he didn't realize that he was a maintenance man.
But you did end up buying a house.
Yeah, but we didn't have any money, and I never ever considered not having money, you know, because I had 4 jobs at home while I raised 4 kids. I was a night nurse. I worked nearly all the time, 7 nights a week. Bill was the babysitter. He was on the night the day job. I was on the night shift. And where was I?
Well, you worked the nights. You made cakes in the lamb tin.
Oh yeah, I had 4 jobs. I sold fashion frocks from Cincinnati and created the
Party plan.
And I think it was my party plans that got very, very fashionable all around town. People used to come in and look at the fashions, and I would carry some of the line and they'd try them on and so forth and say, oh, I like these. Oh, I do like these. They were cheap enough. So the party plan was taking care of fashions. Then I baked lamb cakes. Yeah, I thought you'd do that. I thought you got lamb cakes. I sent away to Europe, to Norway, I think I got that. Lamb cake, mold. And I baked these cakes, decorated in white with coconut, you know, sprinkled all over, and chocolate chips in the eyes, and half of one on the nose, and I put a ribbon around its neck. And then I made the grass for it to sit on with long coconut, colored green, and that was the field that the lamb sat in, and I put a few drops of black
licorice? No?
Well, candy of some kind, black.
Probably licorice.
Yeah, around in the field. So it looked like the lamb had been busy. And I sold those, and I couldn't keep up with the orders. It was marvelous, but very consuming time. Took a lot of time when you're raising a family too, and doing all the gardening and all the cooking and all the canning and the bottling, and because we lived in snow country. You didn't grow anything for 6 months of the year because you couldn't. It was all under snow. So most of your work is solid, 24 hours sometimes during the summertime to get all your bottling done and your canning done. The only thing I ever bought in the grocery store was a can of pumpkin. And that was to make a pumpkin pie, which pumpkin pie. Oh, I like my pumpkin as a vegetable. And here it was, well, I wasn't going to grow pumpkins anyway, so when Bill said, I'd love a pumpkin pie, and I'd say, well, how about apple? And then eventually I read a recipe for pumpkin pie and I never stopped baking them. I was never still. That's why I'm quite happy if I get 6 hours sleep. Now, at the end of my lifetime, it's getting close to that time, I told my daughter Jan, who was the youngest in the family, she came to live with us up in Queensland after we retired. And she said, Mom, I'm here to stay. I've sold everything in Melbourne. I'm going to stay with you. And I said, oh, wonderful, great. We've got plenty of room for you. And she said, I came to take care of you and Dad. And Bill and I just laughed at it. What? We've just retired. We're not dying, you know. She said, no, there comes a time when you have to have a break too, you know. You and Dad could go off on one of your excursions. Take Dad on one of your trips up north. And I said, well, Dad doesn't like scuba diving, and he doesn't like swimming, he doesn't like wetting his feet in the water, he hates sand, he won't have a picnic on the beach. No, he's no fun to take on a picnic.
Okay, take a breath. You've gone to Australia now. Let's go back to America. You haven't come back yet.
Oh, haven't I?
No, you're still in America having kids.
Oh, right.
And buying a house.
Did I do that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My husband said, I don't want to own a house. I said, well, you're going to.
That's right. Yeah, so you did. You bought a house.
Yeah, and then what did I do?
Well, then you had a holiday back in Australia on your own.
Oh, right.
And then, yeah. So how did that come?
I had to earn that, didn't I?
Yep.
Before I could buy a ticket.
Yep.
Because I was married to a model railroader, and that's an expensive hobby. But it kept him home to be a babysitter. I could always go whenever I wanted to because he was there, he had a model railroad to work on, and he took care of the children. It was a wonderful, wonderful life. I'll tell you, next time you get married, consider it. Marry a model railroader. You keep him at home and he can babysit for you.
So
I'm getting a bit hoarse.
And drink of water.
What am I doing now?
Well, then you're coming back to visit Australia, and then Bill decides to follow with all the kids.
No, I did not want to leave the United States. You got that all wrong again. I wish you'd watch your copy there. My husband, when I got back home, he was so pleased to see me.
Hang on, you haven't told him you went away for 3 months.
Oh yeah, I went away for 3 months, but I cut it down to 2 months and had 10 days in Hawaii because I'd given up on what family I might have had back there, except my brother, Peter. Peter was the only one I really needed to see. Nobody else accepted me as family anymore since I found out. I went to work when I was still living in Australia and working at a new job with the Prudential Insurance Company in Collins Street. I had 3 months trial before they accepted me as full-time member of their staff. But in the meantime, where am I?
You found out you were adopted.
No, wait a bit.
No?
Now you've already told the story. Oh, I'm gonna fire this one.
So this is back when before she was married and was working in Melbourne that you found out. Yes?
Where are we?
Well, you were living in America and then you came back for a 3-month holiday. But you weren't working at Prudential then, were you?
Not if I was living in America. For heaven's sakes, where are we in this show? I already explained to my audience that before I was married, I was working in Collins Street, Melbourne for the Prudential Insurance Company. Get your facts straight, love. Anyway, they asked me if I had, I was about to be made a permanent member of the staff. Oh, and look, the company will give you a lifetime policy, insurance policy, when you become a member. And I said, oh, that's pretty good. I thought that was really wonderful. I'd get a lifetime insurance policy. Anyway, they said, oh, by the way, do you have a copy of your birth certificate? And I said, I don't think so. I've never had a use for it. I'll ask my dad. And they said, oh, look, if he can't find one, it won't matter. We can get a copy for you. So I said, no, let me ask my dad if he's got a copy of my birth certificate. I went home to tell him that I needed a copy of my birth certificate before I was going to be accepted at my new job. And my father banged the kitchen table and stood up and carried on, because he'd been at the pub too. And he said, what right do they have to ask us for something private like that in a family? I said, they just want a copy of my birth certificate, that's all. He said, well, you leave it to me and you tell your boss I will bring it in when I find it. I said, okay, that's all I needed to know. So I thought, gee, what a fuss about my birth certificate. And of course, all my life, I couldn't accept my stepmother as my real mother. I just couldn't believe it. Anyway, 3 weeks later, they asked me again if I had a copy of my birth certificate, and I said, no, my dad couldn't find it. He forgot all about it after that. So they said, don't worry, we'll get a copy. We've got a whole list of people that we need to get copies for. So we'll just fill this form in. Now, nobody noticed that I put everything wrong in there because I thought my mother's single name, her single name would have been Little, Bertha Little. So that's the way I filled it in. And then when I got my birth certificate, I found out my birth mother was Grace Duffy. And then I threw it in the air, right in the office. And the accountant said, what's going on? What do you do? I just found out I found my birth mother. And he said, you what? And of course it was against the law for an adopted person to be able to get a birth certificate. It was against the law. That's all changed now, and it was a cousin of mine that got it all changed. He lobbied for that with the government, and he got all that changed because he too was an adoptee, and he wanted it opened up to anybody who wanted a copy of their birth certificate. So something good came out of the whole thing. But that's the way I found out that I did have a birth mother, and it wasn't Bertha Little. It was Grace Duffy. And then I went in search for my relatives. And then when I went back to visit what I grew up with, the family of 10 of my stepmother's family, they didn't recognize me as one of theirs anymore. I'd found out my true birth mother, and nobody was really interested anymore. So I cut my visit short to Australia, and I thought, well, I just don't need that family anymore. They didn't need me anymore. But I tell you, my neighbors were still crazy to hear all my letters, all about what I was doing in the United States. I had enough people that would take me in just in the neighborhood. And that was absolutely wonderful to find that out. But to be rejected by the family I grew up with, it was rather disappointing. So I cut it short and went back to the United States. No, I had 10 days in Hawaii first, because I was a swimmer and my husband was not, and they were in the middle of a snowstorm, and I wasn't going home yet. I didn't like snow, not unless I was ice skating on a pond somewhere. So that's my story.
So
now,
what happened when you got back? Then Bill thought you were homesick and...
Oh, heavens, yes. He said, I think we should migrate to the to Australia. And I said, what? As long as we don't go to Melbourne, around my old family. And he said, why not? That's where you were born. And you'd know more business people around there. So we went back to Melbourne, and that's when the rejection really showed up. They didn't like me being married to an American and having 4 kids that they didn't know anything about. Oh, they did. They used to get letters from me all the time about my kids. Yeah. So
that's the story of Frosty going from Australia.
Yeah, but I don't want to finish on that note. That's not a good note.
What are you going to finish on? And then there can be...
be quiet. I said to my youngest daughter, who took care of her dad and I when I went into hospital for a triple bypass, and then 2 years later, Dad got cancer. She was there for us, and she stayed there. She was still there 12 years later, taking care of her mom and dad. And that was wonderful. I do, at this point, interject a little bit of this one. All she had to do was hear what was going on. She was on a plane to come all the way up to Queensland to help Jan, while one of them went to the hospital with me or went with Dad, and one stayed home with the other. So Linda's always been a part of my life too. I can't get rid of her. We're good friends, but we sure kid a lot. We kid a lot with each other. Anyway.
Well, I just need to say one thing here. Yes, she had 4 children in America, and there's a lot of parallels in our life, and I've always thought I was adopted, and I've searched my parents' bedrooms for many times trying to find adoption papers. I haven't had anything to do with them for a long, long time. I still say that I am Frosty's daughter, but she gave birth to me in Australia and she dumped me. So she's got the 4 children. The last one was born in 54 and then I'm in 64. And even in hospital one time, the doctor did say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
I'm trying to get in here. I thought it was my show. I wasn't too sure. There was something I wanted to say. Now, where did it go? The time?
It's time
What is it?
to wind up.
Okay. What time is
Nearly
it?
12.
Question.
Nearly 12.
Question time.
It's 7 minutes fast. I knew she was going to be sitting there, you see. Jan and I got our heads together. I knew Jan wanted to get back to Victoria, the last place I wanted to come. I was in sunshine up there all the time, swimming every day. And Jan wanted to get back to Victoria. So I said, Jan, you have your freedom. Time to go. And she said, well, thanks, Mom. And what are you going to do? I said, nothing. Go swimming, have a good time. Why? She said, Mom, you can't live by yourself. I said, well, then let's go shopping and see if I can get into a nice place where I've got lots of people and I'll have lots of fun. And she said, okay. So we went around up in Queensland. And I said, as soon as I get settled, you take off. Go back to Victoria. Well, we were thinking about it, and then I thought, well, no, I'd miss Jan so much then, and I'd be down with a lot of old friends. So I said, no, I think I'll go with you. She said, what? I said, yeah, we're going to go together. So I came down here and I said, well, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go out and look for a place for me, but we'd still be nice and close. She said, okay. So we went shopping. We saw half a dozen different places. Some were not interested in even bothering, you know, they just... So I said, no, it's a lovely place, but I don't like the attitude. And then we hit... Where do I live now?
South Morang, yes.
Yes.
What do you mean?
What's the...
With all these ladies, what's called Manor?
Estia. Estia Health, that's right. At Morang, South Morang. Now there was a place and they didn't have a vacancy. They said they'd put me on the books. And the girl that showed us around was a Canadian girl. Lovely girl. Yeah, she works in the front office. And she showed us around, and when she got back, she said to the boss, we're going to have to get a vacancy pretty soon because this lady is really worth having. I nearly killed myself when I heard that. What did I ever say? Well, I've been there 12 months, almost 12 months. I arrived there for my 92nd birthday, the day I arrived there and moved in. Now my anniversary for my stay where I am now living, which I love. Absolutely, they are so good. And I have such a wonderful time with so many people I adore. The help is wonderful. My neighbors, my new neighbors down there are really terrific. I really love them. And I'm having a ball every day. I have my computer in my own room. I can't really do computer work very easily anymore because half my memory is gone now. That's why I've got her tagging along, you see. She's my propter, if she gets it right. But Estia Health at South Barang is, I'm so glad I found a home I really love. It's great. And I hope you all come visit me. I don't get very many visitors.
Because you're never there.
I'm there, but they can't find me in the...
No, she goes out to Scrabble, or she's on her computer and off walking. And we go swimming when you don't cut your arm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you. We've just got something for you because...
Now, it is my grandmother's birthday next week, so I thought a chorus of happy birthday would be in order.
Oh, birthday!
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear.
Oh, isn't it 21st? Look at it. Hello. Hey, missed the eye.
Would you like to blow it out? Thank you.
And I know it's not as good as what Mum used to make. I'm sorry, I forgot the eyes.
And the nose.
I was doing it
and the bell around the
I
neck.
was doing it at 6 o'clock this morning.
Shall we cut the head off for you?
Go for it. Go for it.
Yay! Oh, it's good. I like it. Oh, and flowers too.
And they match your outfit, Frosty.
Oh, lovely.
Colour coordinated.
Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous?
Tell them why you wear purple so much.
Oh, it's to match my bruises. They're all up and down my legs. I got long stockings that go up to here. And sleeves. I've got sleeves, but I've hidden them today.
So do we have any questions?
Yes, over there. Who's that?
Did you ever have an opportunity to meet your birth mother?
My birth mother committed suicide when I was 5 months old. Yeah. Now, I learned an awful lot from all this. Knowing that my birth mother died at such an early age, what was it? What do they call that condition?
She had was it psoriasis?
No. Postnatal depression, which nobody knew about in the 40s, or was it? No, the 30s. When was I born? 1924. Yeah. In the 20s, they didn't know about postnatal depression. But
well, she gave birth to a treasure.
Yes.
oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to say thank you to Frosty. You share the table with her, so I've heard some of these little stories before, and it's lovely to hear them all put together. And then we've had a lovely morning.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Some of the carers come around to our table and they say, "We love stopping at your table. It's always so happy. You're always laughing here."
So thank you, and as I said earlier, if you wish to purchase her book, her and her daughter they had to get it published themselves and stuff, but it's $25 and that's just covering what it costs to get it put together. So thank you, and I'm sure Frosty will sign it for you. So that concludes our morning.